Hello guys and welcome back to my channel Interview with Bunny, and today we are back with another video on system designing playlist. And today we will be starting a completely new playlist on system designing, and that is the fundamental of system designing. So in this playlist we will be discussing each and every components that are required to design a complete system on a whole. So if you have gone through my previous video on system designing where I have given a complete breakthrough of how each and every system are designed, there you must be seeing that I have used lot of components like API gateway, load balancer, caching database, and lot of components that are required to build a system. But lot of you guys have commented over the videos that we need a complete video of each and every attribute or each and every component so that we can know in detail that on what are the use case we might be using a particular attribute or a particular component. So for example, you are storing some data in a database. So at that time, whether you should go with a NoSQL database or you should go with a SQL database, or whenever you are using a SQL database, whether you should go with a MySQL database or it can be Postgres or any other database. So on what attribute or what are the reasons that on which we should choose a particular database or any of the components that are required for the system designing. So in this playlist we will be discussing all those things. Also in this video playlist I will be adding one more topic, that is the estimation of the system designing. So all those answers you will be getting and all those calculations that are required you will be getting over here in this playlist. So I hope this playlist will be very helpful for you guys if you have started learning the system designing from the scratch, or if you want to revise any of the topic before you want to appear for the interview. So believe me, this playlist will talk about everything that you need to design a large scale distributed architecture. But before going into all those things that what are the major components that we will be discussing in this playlist, I just want to give you an overview that what is the system designing and why we actually need to give this interview, and why this interview right now in 2026 is very much important, and this can be the most critical interview during your entire selection process. So let's first understand that what is a system designing. So system designing is the process of defining the architecture, components, modules, data flow of the system to satisfy the requirements. So for example, if you are appearing for an interview or in the real world, if you are developing a real world system, then what the first step is like, you have to gather the functional requirement from your interviewer or from the client. So that is why here for solving any of the system designing interview question, if you have seen my long form video, I have divided the entire video into 5 to 6 major steps. Number 1 is the functional requirement, where you actually talks with your interviewer or with your client to gather that what is the system that you have to design, what are the major functional requirement that you have to solve. So for example, you are designing a Uber. So at that time your main functional requirement would be that a user should be able to log into your application, they should be able to book the car or any vehicle. So all these things that are the primary goal of the system becomes your functional requirement. And once you gather all the functional requirement, the next step that you will be discussing with your interviewer is the non-functional requirement, which tells that the scalability of the system, the reliability of the system. So this talks about all the characteristics of the system that you have to fulfill, and why it is actually needed to understand the non-functional requirement. The main reason is, depending on the scale of the system or how you want to character your system, the choice of the database, the choice of the module or any component that you are involving in your system actually changes. So for example, you need a database which need a very high write throughput, means the writing time of that database should be nominal. So at that time you have to go for a Cassandra database. So in this way, depending on the non-functional requirement that whatever your interviewer is telling you, and at that time only you have to take the call that which component you should use and what are the different type of things that you have to take into consideration while designing the system. Now the next third step of solving this problem is identifying the core entity, where we define that what are the major core entities that are needed to solve or fulfill all the functional requirements. Now once we are done with all these 3 steps, now the next optional step that comes for designing the system is the API designing, where we tell our interviewer that what are the public REST endpoint that we need to fulfill all the functional requirement that we have gathered. So for example, the client or the interviewer have given a functional requirement that we have to give the support for the user onboarding. So obviously at that time, we have to disclose few of the API endpoint that support that. So for example, we have to write one endpoint for the registration purpose, one for the signing, one for the profile update, and all these things. So based on the functional requirement, our API endpoint also changes. But this is an optional step because writing all the endpoints can take a lot of time. So within the 45 minutes or 50 minutes of interview, it is normally not possible to write everything. So discuss with your interviewer whether it is necessary or not. And now once we are done with all the steps, we come with our main core thing, and that is the high level designing of our system, where we disclose that what are the components or what are the modules that we need to fulfill all the functional requirements that we have gathered. And when we are doing the high level designing, at that time only this concept of each and every attribute or every module is actually necessary. Means whatever the topic that we will be covering in this fundamental course. So for example, whether the connection that you are using, whether it will be a WebSocket connection or it will be an HTTPS connection. So based on those concepts, or once you are clear with all the concepts that on what are the use case you should use a particular component, it will be very easy for you to design the entire system as a whole. And once you are done with the high level design, the next important thing is the deep dive designing of our system, or the low level designing, where we go into each component or each service and we tell that how we can optimize that even further and how the data communication takes place between different components. So for doing the high level designing and the deep dive designing, the fundamental concept of the system designing is very crucial. I hope this is clear that what is system designing and how you should be solving a real world system designing problem going forward. And if you have not seen my earlier video on system designing, all the 1 hour long form video, I will recommend you, once you are done with this entire course and once you know all the basic of all the components, feel free to go through that course one by one. I can bet you that once you are done with all this preparation, you can easily clear any system designing interview, whether it is from Google, Microsoft, Amazon, or whatsoever. Now comes the main question, that why we need to give this system designing interview. Because earlier what we used to see that DSA becomes the poor interview round for any hiring process. But the things are getting changed, and I can see that with respect to current job market, system designing is getting much more precedence or much more priority. And the main reason behind that, right now we are in the world of agentic AI. Means everything starting from writing the code, writing the logic, all these things can be done by agent or by using some LLM model. But the designing of the system is actually crucial starting from the junior developer, because until and unless you do not know what to design or how to design, it might become very difficult for you to design an entire system as a whole. Because just by doing the prompt engineering, you might be able to write the code, but how different systems should be interacting with each other, that can be done with the system designing knowledge what you have. Because though your ChatGPT or Gemini will give you the complete architecture or complete designing, but in case you do not have the knowledge of how to design a system, you cannot do a counter question that what is the reason for choosing a particular database, or what is the reason for choosing a particular approach. So if you have the knowledge of the system designing, then at that time it will become very easy to grow in your career. And that is the only reason why the job market or the job interview is demanding the concept of the system designing right now. Because earlier I have seen that post 6 to 7 years, this system designing was must. But right now in this job market, starting from the second year only, many interviewer or many companies are looking for candidates with the knowledge of the system designing. And that is why I believe system designing becomes a crucial round for getting any job. I hope this clears that why we need to learn system designing for clearing any of the interview as well as to sustain in the industry. Now talking to this playlist, that what are the things that we will be covering. So as I have told you, in this playlist I will be covering all the fundamentals of the system designing, starting from how a client and the server talks to each other, what is the DNS, what are the network protocol we have, what is throughput estimation, caching, everything that is needed to design the entire system. So this playlist will be a very much resourceful, and while I will be designing all this fundamental concept, I will try to correlate all these things with my actual bigger design, so that you can understand that how these things or how this concept become relevant while you are designing a large scale application. So I hope this playlist will become very useful for you guys. So see you on our next video, where we will be starting our first concept of system designing fundamental, and that is the client and the server architecture. So see you on our next video. Thank you.